Hey guys, welcome to interview week. Really excited, as I am every week, to have now my friend here, Kristen Schill. Kristen, thank you for being here.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So you guys, we're going to cap off our month on marriage, and Kristen and I are going to be talking about her marriage. Just to give you a little bit of background information, Kristen and her husband Chris have been married for 24 years. They actually travel the country talking to groups of people on marriage and leadership, all sorts of awesome things. And they even mentor couples one-on-one as well. So Kristen knows what she's talking about. Am I right?
I would hope to think so. I mean, I have some experience.
Yeah. So I hope you guys will enjoy our chat today. So, all right. Well, Kristen, first thing I want to ask is for you to just give us some background information on you and Chris. Obviously, following Jesus is a big thing for us here at SoulyDevoted, and so just some background information on you and Chris. Like, were you guys married, or were you guys Christians when you got married?
Well, I think if you had asked us then, both of us would have said, "Yeah, we're believers. We're Christians. We know who Jesus is. We know He died for us, and we want to go to heaven one day." I think we both would have said that, and we both would have felt like we were telling the truth. But along the way, we realized that maybe that wasn't entirely true, because there is a difference between being a believer and being a Christ follower. And thankfully, along our journey, we figured out the difference, and we recognize that it takes effort. It takes effort. You can't, it's not just belief. I mean, Satan believes in Jesus too. So, I mean, it's not just the belief, it's acting on that belief and following after Christ and wanting to be more like Christ. And we both had different separate events in our life that sort of spurred us on to actually be Christ followers.
Okay. And at what point in your marriage did that kind of happen for you guys?
Well, for me, it was when we had when we started having kids. We have 2 girls, and when I decided that I wanted to lead my kids to be Christians, I realized there was a lot that I still needed to learn if I was going to lead. And so that's a great point. That's kind of when I got into it. That's kind of when I got into figuring out what that meant for me. That it was more than belief, but it was action too. So
okay. And then for Chris, when did that happen for him?
Chris was a little bit later. When our kids were born, I was like, we have to take them to church, and he would go because he loved our kids.
Okay.
But he didn't go because he wanted to. And so it took him a while. It took him a while of being around other Christians who he admired and respected. And it took a specific event. He went to a Christian leadership retreat, and he just was like, he went into that weekend a certain way, and he came out of it completely changed. And so it's been ever since then that we've both been on this, together we've been on the journey of just making sure that Christ's at the center of our family.
Cool. Well, thank you for giving the little bit of background on that. So now going into marriage, specifically, do you, looking back now, specifically considering like these changes in your life, in your walk with Jesus, can you see a difference in your marriage looking back?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. Like, what was your marriage like before you guys really got on board with following Jesus?
I will say that Chris and I have always had a good marriage. Like, there was never a time that we felt like divorce was an option. We never felt like there was a time where we didn't love each other. So that is a blessing.
Yeah.
But there was a time when, just based on decisions and priorities in Chris's life, in his life, compared to the priorities that I had in my life, there was a point where I did I did say to him, hey, you're doing your deal, and I'm going to take the girls and I'm going to go live with my mom because, you're not contributing anyway. And, I feel like a single parent, and you know what I mean? There were those moments in our life and in our marriage where we felt like we were not on the same page. We definitely, there were struggle points, and I think the majority of it was because our priorities weren't the same.
Sure.
So prior to us coming to this point where we decided, we wanted to follow after Christ and be more like him, we struggled in our marriage because we didn't have the same priorities, and we didn't know how to communicate them.
Okay.
We didn't argue a lot, thankfully, but when we did, it was intense fellowship. So,
oh gosh, I know what that's like. Yeah.
Yes, and so we just it's just completely different. We're not only committed to communication in a way that we never were before, but we're just more equipped. We have more resources. Our priorities are the same, and we just have made those choices over the years. So, but I mean, communication is the crux of. I mean, there's no way we could have gotten on the same page with our priorities and read the same resources and done all that stuff if we weren't communicating with one another. So,
would you say that that's probably the biggest thing that's changed is just your level of communication?
100%. My mother-in-law told me this. She told me this. My mother-in-law is a crack up. She's a hoot, and I love her, and she's so fun. But this one thing she told me when we were really a lot younger. I mean, we've been together for 30 years. So I want to say maybe I was 17. I don't know. Maybe I was a little bit older than that. But anyway, she said to me, honey, Chris will never know what you're thinking. It doesn't matter how much he loves you. It doesn't matter how much you think he should know. He will never be able to read your mind. And if you want him to know something, you have to tell him. And when she told me that number one sounded like, duh, Right. I was like, okay.
Of course.
But then, you do go through those times. A lot of women do, where you're like, if you loved me, you'd know.
Right.
That I'm hurting right now.
Right,
that you'd said this.
How can you not know how I'm feeling after 20 years?
Yeah.
Come on.
Right. But I'm telling you, that has saved us so much trouble in our life because I believed her when she said that. And so my delivery's not always great. I'm not perfect, but
right.
But it has changed the way we are a married couple because we communicate in a way where I don't expect him to read my mind. And I've learned how to deliver that message, those messages,
right,
so that it doesn't always end up in intense fellowship. So
right. Yeah. No, that's a great point because I know when Trent and I got married, I was a terrible communicator, and he would just sit me in a room and be like, "I'm not leaving until you tell me what's wrong."
Right.
And as terrible and painful as those times were, I'm glad he did that because now I am a lot more comfortable just if something's bugging me going and telling him, and then we hash it out and we we work through it, and there's not this like big elephant in the room all the time just like looming, when you get into an argument and there's no clarification and resolution. It's just like
right,
and that continues to stay with you, and then the next time you guys have a fight, and then the next time you have a fight, and then eventually everybody just blows up because they've been stuffing this stuff for long periods of time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Part of good communication is also forgiveness. Like you can't, that's another thing that we have worked on over the years is just you can't hold on to the last thing. But if you communicate well during each thing and you try to lessen the emotions during that communication, then things aren't said that you don't mean to say, and things are done that you don't mean to do, and so that helps. I think the communication. You have to also bring forgiveness into the mix too, But I think that learning how to talk to one another in a way that's productive is priceless.
Yeah. So that's kind of how Jesus has played a part in your marriage together. But specifically, like when you're interacting with Chris, if there's something that's bugging you, or maybe it's not even something that's bugging you, maybe you guys are just going through a challenging time or whatever, is there something, maybe a Bible verse or just an aspect of God's character or Jesus's character that really comes to mind and really plays a part specifically on your end?
Well, yes, in grace. Grace. I cannot. I get so much grace, from God, but also from Chris. And so I always need to remember that, and that's how I always try to approach any sort of situation where we're having trouble or not communicating well, and I just try to approach it from a place of grace because I get it, I think that's only fair, and I'm so thankful for it. And it's funny. Last night I was food prepping with my daughter, and I was loading the dishwasher, and I picked up a glass that was half full of water, which my lovely husband does all the time. And every time I pick up the thing to go put it in the dishwasher, and I either throw the water over my shoulder, or I throw it, or I spray it all over the dishwasher. And I was like, oh, dang it. Your dad left this water glass half full again. She's like, Mom, Dad has been doing that for as long as I could remember. And you never get mad at him about it. I'm like, but it's because I'm like, I know he can't remember to just dump it out. Just dump it out, So
it's a habit.
Yeah.
It's a habit.
And I'm like, but you know what? He's got so many other great qualities.
Oh gosh. Yes.
And I'm like, yes. And I try to remember that all the time. Like, he's so great in so many other ways. That's so minor.
Yeah.
And so I just try to always think about those things when I'm upset.
Oh gosh, that is great. That is great advice, because there's obviously great qualities about all of our husbands. If there weren't, we wouldn't have married them. Like, if they were just legitimately terrible people, we would have never said I do. Right. And so to be able to pinpoint, okay, why are the reasons why I loved you in the first place? Those qualities are probably still there, and focusing on those is so helpful.
For sure. And they're so much more important. You know what I mean? He is such a man of character and generosity, and he's so wise. And I mean, all of those things are so much more important to me than water in a glass.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that, I pray for that. You know what I mean? I pray for those things in my spouse and in my kids and in people I care about. And so, like, water in the glass is nothing.
Whatever, right?
It's nothing.
Oh, good. Good. Okay, so one last question. What advice would you give to somebody that's watching? I think everything that you've said so far has been great advice, but if you could say one thing to somebody that's watching that's going through just a real tough time in their marriage right now, what would you say?
A couple things. I think number one, and it's not always easy for people to do, but pray together. I think couples should pray together. Bringing Jesus into it. Sometimes I think, when we're fighting or struggling or whatever, going through something tough, where the two of us are together and like we put Jesus on the outside, and it's like, no, his rightful place is in the middle. And so, you can't hold somebody's hand and pray with them and be upset with them. Like, I just don't think, I think it's the same thing with Christian music. Sometimes it's like, you just put it on in the house. It's like, you can't be in a bad mood. So, but I just feel like, pray together, but also communicate. I'm a super big advocate of a weekly meeting, for so many reasons, every couple is different. Every couple has different things going on in their lives. But I think setting aside, making it an important thing to set aside time to communicate as a couple. I know it seems like a business transaction to set up a meeting or whatever, but the value is so enormous to get on the same page with your schedule, with your priorities, with your obligations, with your feelings, with your successes and your failures. You get to talk about that when you schedule a time together, and it doesn't have to be emotional. You know what I mean? Because you can address those issues all throughout the week for sure. But usually you're doing that when you're in the middle of them and they're coming at you, and you have this emotional aspect to it that maybe we don't always make the best decisions when we feel like we're hijacked or stressed out or whatever. So if you schedule a time to meet together and go over the things that are important in your life, it's super, super valuable to feeling like you're doing something together. There's a book called A Lifelong Love, and one of the biggest points that I loved about that book, and I mean, lots of great things in there, but one of the things I loved is it said that couples should have a magnificent obsession. And when they have a magnificent obsession, that just means they're running after something together. Okay. And that could be anything. I think marriage and family is enough of a magnificent obsession. That qualifies as a magnificent obsession. But if we're never in communication over that thing that we want to make excellent, it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to be a lot windier road, to get to the excellent place if we're putting communication about that goal
on the back burner.
Yeah, on the back burner. Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point. I'll have to read that. I haven't read that book.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I'm going to look that up.
That's really good.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, that was like a ton of great information. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I know I've learned some stuff for sure today that I think I'm going to start implementing in my own marriage. I hope you guys have as well. If you are appreciative that Kristen has shared the great information that she has, please leave a comment below and just thank her for that. If there's something that you want to add to the conversation, we would love to hear from you guys. So again, add a comment below. If you think somebody needs to hear this, share it all over the place. Yeah. I know I have a real passion for marriages and good ones and godly ones, and I know Kristen, you do as well. And so as many people as we can get this information out to would be great. So that's it. So thanks again, Kristen.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You guys have a great week. I'll see you next Wednesday.